to the FIX, Conservative Party in the mix.
It's the podcast of 2026.
Get the rhythm, get the rhythm.
You can't resist the show.
Everybody knows this is the Daly Fix.
Make America Daly Fix again! Trump Daly!
The other shows ain't got nothing on Drax and K Daly.
K Daly with 40 years in the political arena, joined by Drax for sharp analysis, political comedy clips, and the real stories behind the headlines. No spin, no scripts, just real talk on DC politics and the real issues that matter to America. First, Patriots. The most entertaining and most informative, truthful conservative live stream in America, on air every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. DALY to the FIX, Conservative America,
All up in the mix. 2026.
get the rhythm, get the rhythm.
You can't resist the show.
Everybody knows this is the Daily Fix.
I don't want any of that fake news.
You are fake
I
news.
just want my Daily Fix.
Unfiltered, no scripts, America. This is how we heal. DALY to the FIX. DALY to the FIX.
Everyone's down with Drax and DCK.
DC, I'm hooked on phonics. I'm only A and B so far. You know the thing. If we can only stop Medicaid, come on, man.
Dick Nixon's silver bullet, as he called it. Now, when I said, Mr. President, that's a great recipe, this is a great martini, he said, yeah, I got the recipe from Winston Churchill.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Phantom MAGA, political comic and conservative video producer on X. Some people are out there looks maxing, while other people are out there gym maxing. And then you've got some people on the left wing spectrum that are out there retard maxing. But on the other hand, you've got Roger Stone, who has been Nixon maxing before it was even a term. If you haven't seen his documentary on Netflix, Get Me, Roger Stone, I highly suggest it. It's totally educational, historic, informative, and absolutely entertaining. I was cracking up the whole time. It was absolutely amazing. And he has a kick-ass line of suits where you can look classy and totally badass at the same time. And if you haven't seen the trailer yet, check it out for yourself. Here it is.
He loves the game, he has fun with it, and he's very good at it.
I'm an agent provocateur.
Political strategist.
Controversial as you can get.
An incredible capacity for treachery.
Win at all cost mentality.
When people think of Washington corruption, they think of Roger Stone.
Those who say I have no soul, those who say I have no principles, are losers. Those are bitter losers.
There's really nobody quite like Roger Stone.
The Nixon tattoo is really all you need to know about Roger.
We really pioneered negative campaign advertising.
He created the modern sleazeball lobbyist.
Washington's been worse for it ever since.
Stone's rule: it is better to be infamous than never be famous at all.
The swinger scandal happened.
My private life is nobody's business.
I got chased out of Washington.
He's looking to see if he can find an angle.
I was like a jockey looking for a horse. You can't win the race if you don't have a horse.
Roger saw something that nobody else saw back in the early 80s.
I suggested that Trump should explore a bid for the presidency.
He created Donald Trump as a political figure.
What have I lied about?
Have you spoken with the WikiLeaks founder?
You're a rape denier.
Roger, you can't just say that.
You have to be outrageous to get noticed.
America may be collapsing, but Roger Stone is determined to enjoy it.
He is a longtime confidant of our current president and now author of The Making of the President 2016, How Donald Trump Orchestrated a Revolution. Donald Trump's albino assassin, Roger Stone. Roger. Now, you don't mind that I call you his albino assassin, do you?
No, comrade. I
Okay.
mean, Bill.
And now for a Phantom MAGA intro feature film.
Operation Midnight Jack Smith Hammer is about to commence. We are going in.
(10-4) closing in on the Smith residence now.
No mercy.
Yes, sir.
I repeat, Maverick and Red Rover wake baby Jack from the bassinet.
Jack Smith should receive the full Roger Stone treatment with a SWAT team banging on Jack Smith's door at 3 a.m. What do you say to that?
Showtime!
The breach has full approval.
Roger that.
Honey, what in the hell is that?
You know one of my quotes? Greatness comes in simple trappings.
Static in the wire, power in the vein. Plugging in the jack just to numb the brain. 010, yeah, the sequence is right. We're hunting for the signal in the dead of the night. The skylines glowing like a circuit board. I'm a data string junkie looking for the chord.
Eight o'clock on the East Coast, 5 o'clock with Soviet Rodents tearing it up with hammer and sickle way out there on the West Coast. It's time to get your news served up straight with me and DCK. That's right, it's 8. All right, people are already rolling in. I see who we got all down here tonight. Yeah, a lot of people already stopping in for this great show. We got the man, the myth, the legend, Roger Stone's in the studio. He'll be joining us in just a few minutes. We got Joker, Autumn, Patriot Nola. I see the badass Bodie out there. All you guys, thanks for rolling in. You know your routine. Share it out far and wide. Don't be mean to your friends, your team rooms, your enemies. If they don't like you, still send them a DM, see if they want to come in. Quote it out, and I promise you, me and DCK will tiptoe through the tulips. I might find that little dog of hers, put it on a leash, walk with her backwards through the darkness as we repost your quote post. Drive them up to the top of the timeline, or whatever timeline the kid left you out there. Put them in the cannon, blast them all the way off. Where to? That's right, over to Iran. We'll see if our friends in the sand want to lend us a hand if there's anything left of all their land right here tonight on the Daly Fix, man. Wow, okay, we made it to Wednesday. We got Mr. Stone down there waiting for us. What a great day it already is, man. A lot of stuff going on out there. We voted in Michigan yesterday, which is, like I said, some people are not too happy with the results there.
Actually, I am. I think that Al Sayed is easier to beat than almost anyone else. So we'll see. The numbers certainly didn't bear out what happened in the actual election. So
yeah,
and we've got some clips after Roger's got to go tonight, but I wanted to mention something right off the bat for those of you who were following Annalise Camp and her family during the tragedy that has unfolded. She was a 2-year-old who drowned in a pool and was taken to Children's Hospital, Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. They didn't quite do what they probably should have in terms of life-saving measures. She unfortunately passed away this week, and we'll talk about it more on Friday. But please, if you can spare a prayer in your devotional today, please do for the family of Annalise Camp. They're they're going through a lot. Losing a child is incredibly, it's incredibly hard. It's the worst thing that can happen to a family.
Yeah, we'll see. Say prayers for the Smith family out there, because they have went through a terrible tragedy. Terrible. All right, you guys.
Absolutely.
Continue to share it out, man. We want to get out as far as we can tonight. So we got a great guest in the house. We got the man, the myth, the legend himself, Roger Stone. Let's bring him on in, Kay.
I know you're excited.
There we go. Good to see you, Roger. Welcome back to the Daly Fix.
Kay, Drax, great to be with you. Great to be Nixon maxing with you. I've waited 30 years for this moment, so I'm delighted to unfold it for your audience.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here, the dean of Dick Nixon maxing. This is a new phenomenon that's out there. I got a page of questions for you. So
there you
go. I want to dive in right from the jump. For those who have been living under a rock, can you explain your background a bit with Richard Nixon, the former president of the United States?
Quite simply. Yeah. So I met Richard Nixon when I was 16 years old. I met him at the National Women's Republican Club in New York City. I subsequently wrote him a letter in which I told him, it was 1967, that I thought he'd been robbed of the presidency in 1960. Thought he'd been cheated both in Illinois and in Texas, and that I'd hoped that he would run again, and if he did, well, that I wanted in. And to my surprise, his staff put that letter on file, and about a year and a half later, I was contacted by his office to ask me if I was still interested in helping in his campaign. And I said, absolutely. Now, the campaign, unlike your typical presidential campaign, Nixon's comeback campaign was being run out of New York City rather than out of Washington, D.C. I was contacted by one of his assistants, John Whitaker, asked me to come in for an interview. And I said, absolutely. I took the train in from Connecticut, where I lived. And when I showed up, of course, they were somewhat surprised because they thought, I was an adult. They had no idea that I was still in my teens. But I basically wangled my way into a job at the 1968 Republican National Convention in Miami Beach as a gopher for John Mitchell, Nixon's campaign manager, his law partner, later his attorney general, I think later wrongfully sent to prison in Watergate. I went on to be the chairman of Youth for Nixon in my home state of Connecticut under the leadership of Governor John Davis Lodge. In 1970, I left for college in Washington, D.C., but in 1972, I had an opportunity, I had to make a decision. Was I going to study political science or was I going to actually engage in it? I had an opportunity to join the committee for the re-election of the president, was the youngest member of the staff. And it's important to note that I only saw and met President Nixon during that campaign one time when he did a tour of the headquarters and we shook hands. It was not until I became the Young Republican National Chairman in 1979 that I actually met Richard Nixon. He invited me to lunch. He was then in exile, of course, in Casa Pacifica in California. And that's when our real relationship began. It's interesting because Ken Kachigian, who's just written a great book called, I think it's called the Inside Story of Nixon. You go to ReaganandNixon.com. Great book by Ken Kachigian. But he was the aide to President Nixon who met me and said, now, the president only has a few minutes, so you probably only have 15 minutes. And I went in to see President Nixon, and he asked me how the party was doing, congratulated me on my election as Young Republican National Chairman. And then he said, well, how do you think things look in 1980? And I said, well, I think the party's in great shape. I think we're going to beat Jimmy Carter. And he said, well, surely the party will nominate John Connally, former governor of Texas, former Democrat who had switch parties, become a Republican, gone on to be the Secretary of the Treasury. And I said, no, sir, I'm sorry, but we're going to be nominating Ronald Reagan in 1980. He said, really? I said, sir. He asked me why. I gave him several reasons, and he said, and I quote, are you free for lunch? And I ended up talking politics with the president for about 4.5 hours and a broad cross section of issues. From that point on, we became good friends. He would call every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Remember, he's on the West Coast, so that was early his time. But he had a voracious appetite for political gossip and political intelligence. And then in 1980, when I went to work for Ronald Reagan, pardon me, 1984, when I went to work for Ronald Reagan, part of my job was to visit President Nixon, then living in New York City, and then later New Jersey, every Friday, and give him a briefing on the Reagan campaign. This is a period in which we became the closest. I became convinced fairly early that Watergate was a deep state setup. But I must tell you, I've written 2 books on the subject. One is called Nixon's Secrets, the inside story of Watergate, the break-in and the pardon. The other one is entitled Tricky Dick, The Rise and Fall and Rise of Richard M. Nixon. You can get both of them, by the way, by going to stonezone.com, stonezone.com. You can get a signed copy. But I must tell you, because our media in the period in which Nixon was under fire was monolithic, meaning there were only 3 television stations, there were only a handful of national news magazines. Nixon had no platform from which to launch a counterattack. So the truth about Watergate never got told. President Trump, who I went on to work for, has asked me numerous times, why did Nixon quit? Why didn't he fight it out? Well, if the internet had existed in 1973 and 74, I think he might have fought it out because he would have had a platform from which to launch a counterattack. But with a monolithic media completely against him and Democrats controlling both houses of Congress, even though we had a Republican president, he had no opportunity to tell the truth. Now, I give credit for this new phenomena, something I've worked for 30 years. I wrote 2 books on it. By the way, those books did okay, but they never sold the way my book on the Kennedy assassination, the man who killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ, New York Times bestseller. That book continues to sell well. Until recently, my books on Nixon did not sell well because in the minds of most Americans, the question of Richard Nixon was a decided question. He was a bad guy, he was a criminal, he was a paranoid. And what we now know, based on declassified information, is Watergate was a setup. And the guy who kicked this off is Vice President J.D. Vance. Speaking at the Nixon Library only about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month, he said, we now know that the takedown of Richard Nixon was very similar. He was taken down by the same deep state forces who tried to take President Trump down. And that kicked off the phenomena of Nixon maxing. That, and frankly, the Nixon Foundation, which has done a great job in terms of using video clips and memes and other online activities on Instagram, on X, and so on, have kicked off a new generation of interest in Richard Nixon, in the truth about Watergate, but more importantly, about the Nixon record. So they have accomplished, between J.D. Vance and the Nixon Foundation, they've accomplished something that I've been trying to accomplish for 30 years, a re-examination of Nixon the man. First of all, let's dispose of Watergate. Watergate, based on declassified documents, we now know that the CIA was fully aware of the plans for the Watergate break-in, that 4 of the 8 Watergate burglars were still on the payroll of the CIA, that Judge John Sirica, who sat in the trial of the Watergate burglars, broke the law by meeting secretly with the Watergate prosecutors, that Deep Throat, was not Mark Felt. Deep Throat was actually Al Haig, President Nixon's chief of staff. whose job was to remove Nixon and set him up. But the real villain of Watergate is none other than John
John
Dean,
Dean.
the guy who would tell you today that he was a whistleblower. In fact, the man who planned, pushed, and covered up the Watergate break-in and then lied to President Nixon for 19 straight months about it was none other than John Dean. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, we finally get an examination of Richard Nixon's record as president, which is an extraordinarily impressive record.
You're exactly right. And you took my second question, Roger, about the declassification and the new information out there, that has unveiled the real Richard Nixon. Now, you described Nixon maxing a bit. What is your definition of Nixon maxing?
Nixon maxing is using the president's speeches, his interviews, his media clips to generate a reexamination of his record. In other words, Bill Clinton, I think, said it best of all people at President Nixon's funeral. I was there, along with a number of all the former presidents at that time, the Nixons, the Fords, the Bushes, and so on, that saying that it was time that Richard Nixon be judged by the totality of his entire record, not just because of Watergate. And that, I think, is the great strength of Nixon maxing. Here's a man who negotiated a strategic arms limitation with the Russians, saving this country literally billions of dollars. Here's a man who opened the door to China. Now, this is very important. At the time that Nixon recognized China, it was a dirt poor agrarian society. Most people didn't have indoor plumbing, no toilets. Most areas did not have electricity in the rural areas. They were not a military strength. They weren't a military threat. It wasn't until 30 years later when Bill Clinton, followed by George W. Bush, gave them most favored nation trading status that China became the dangerous military and economic superpower that they are today. That was 30 years later. There was no way for Nixon to know that. Nixon's goal in recognizing China was to play them off against the Russians to get that strategic arms limitation agreement. Nixon recognized that although they were both theoretically communists, the Chinese and the Russians had hundreds of miles of common border and hundreds of years of distrust of each other. On top of which, Nixon desegregated the public schools. Not Lyndon Johnson, not John F. Kennedy. 80+% of the public schools in America were still segregated when Nixon became president. By the time he left office, that number was in the teens. No violence, no killings, completely done through the Justice Department. President Nixon unilaterally saves Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. The Israelis have a failure of their intelligence. They learn of a surprise attack by the Egyptians and the Syrians. Their backs are against the sea. They're out of ammunition. They were on the edge of total and complete annihilation when Richard Nixon, over the objections of Dr. Henry Kissinger, over the objections of the Joint Chiefs, orders a airlift of $36 million in lethal aid, plus non-lethal aid sent by ship, that literally saves Israel from complete and total annihilation. Now you have the 18-year-old vote, Richard Nixon, the end of the military draft, Richard Nixon, the war on cancer, Richard Nixon. So this is an extraordinarily progressive, wrong word, I guess, but extraordinarily successful record. Now, that is not to say that there were not some things that I think President Nixon did wrong. Taking us off the gold standard was an egregious mistake. Wage and price controls were a mistake. And I write about that in both of my books, both Nixon's Secrets and Tricky Dick, The Rise and Fall and Rise of Richard Nixon. But now that we've gotten Watergate kind of out of the way, people can look with fresh eyes at Richard Nixon and recognize he was an extraordinarily successful president. Ended the war in Vietnam, for example. So the question you might ask, and I think it's a fair question, is why did the deep state take him down? It's very
Right.
simple. He was for peace. He wanted to end the war in Vietnam. He wanted to end the Cold War with both Russia and China. He was a peacemaker. That war, as you know, is extraordinarily profitable for some, and therefore, when they elected Nixon, they thought he was the ultimate hardliner. They thought he would extend the war in Vietnam. In fact, he brought the war to a conclusion. We moved to an all volunteer army. Nixon's the first president in decades who cut military spending. We actually spent less on the military because he correctly argued, as Eisenhower had, that we already had the capacity to kill everybody around the globe 12 times. Why did we need the capacity to kill them 15 times? So whether it was that, whether it was his civil rights record, where he gave us affirmative action, but he also quadrupled the funding for black colleges. He doubled the funding for civil rights enforcement. He was a very successful presidency, but all of this gets lost in the ashes of Watergate. And thanks to the phenomena of Nixon maxing, that is now changing.
Well, why do you think it appeals so much to this next generation of young people out there? I mean, besides appearing on TikTok, a lot of things appear on TikTok. Why do you think that President Nixon has captured the imagination of these new generations to politics?
Because I think that young people see the way the deep state tried to destroy Donald Trump. And they now understand the exact same thing, exact same forces, the CIA, the FBI, the national media, specifically the Washington Post, the New York Times. So now when you say, oh, Nixon, he was a crook, it's not so fast. Or Nixon, he was involved in political espionage. The only political espionage that I've seen was when the Obama administration spied on President Donald Trump. So I think young people see what happened to Trump and they realize that this quite plausibly, and most definitely did, happen to Richard Nixon. And then there is kind of a 1960s vibe to it. People need to recognize that Nixon's career is one of perseverance. In other words, he ran against John Kennedy. He was a very successful 8-year vice president. I believe, and I make this case in both of my books, that election was stolen from him, not just in Illinois, but also in Texas. And he then makes what many thought was a mistake, ended up working to his advantage. He was talked into running for governor of California in 1962, a race that he surprisingly lost. He ran for governor, not really because he was interested in being governor, but also because he thought it would keep him alive for the 1964 presidential nomination. Now, Nixon could not foresee the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He could not foresee the assassination of Robert Kennedy. He could not foresee the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And of course, in 1960, he could not foresee the deep divisions in the country over the war in Vietnam. But those events, the assassination of both Kennedys, Dr. King, and the war in Vietnam, parted the seas in a way that allowed Nixon to make the greatest single comeback in American political history up until the comeback of Donald Trump. So people like a fighter. It's true, and you showed it at the beginning of your show. I have a tattoo of Richard Nixon on my back. It's about the size of a grapefruit. It's right between my shoulder blades. And people ask me why. Well, let me say this. It's not really a political statement. What it is for me is a daily reminder that in life, when things don't go your way, when you suffer setbacks and defeats, when you're disappointed, when you're disillusioned, when you're ready to quit, that's the time you have to get up off the mat, dust yourself off, and get back in the fight for America.
Always.
Never give up, a stone maxim.
Yeah. And I remember they did say that. They said he was kind of resurrected his political, campaign to run for president. I mean, because after the Kennedy and then Bobby, it kind of paved the way for him.
The story of Nixon is a story of persistence. It's a story of resilience. It's an American story. It's a story of never quitting. As Nixon famously said, a man is not finished when he's defeated. he's only finished when he quits. Everybody knows that. I think most people realize, even though it was 7 years ago, I went through some very difficult times when I was targeted by Robert Mueller in a totally fraudulent prosecution. How do you lie under oath about Russian collusion when we now know there was no Russian collusion to lie about? How's that possible? So I was framed in a Soviet-style show trial in Washington, D.C. Corrupt prosecutors wanted to send me to prison for 7 to 9 years for involvement in foreign interference in our election, which did not exist. I'm with you only through the grace of God, only through the power of prayer, and only for the fact that President Donald Trump issued me a full and unconditional pardon. So I understand that idea of never quitting. I understand the difficulty of hardship and coming back from the edge. This is one of the reasons why I identify with and admire President Nixon, who went through hell himself.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, watching, even folks all the way back to Lincoln, he didn't win his first race. He kept on, though, and became one of our greatest presidents of all time.
And then his debate with John Kennedy when he didn't wear the makeup. I mean, that was Nixon. He was just more of a manly man, right? He didn't want to wear makeup there.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, first of all, he should never have debated Kennedy. He told President Eisenhower he wasn't going to. Remember, Kennedy was far less known than Nixon. Nixon had been vice president for 8 years. He was a household word. John Kennedy was lesser known. But I think Nixon couldn't take the idea of the challenge, so he surprised everybody by agreeing to debate. Now, he also made one classic mistake in the 1960 campaign. He made a pledge to visit all 50 states. Well, that meant that he spent time in tiny states like Utah, Vermont, where he would definitely win, in those days both reliably Republican, where John Kennedy spent his time in the swing states almost exclusively. He didn't need to visit places like Rhode Island or Massachusetts, for example. So Nixon bumped his knee on a car door while campaigning in North Carolina. That became a staph infection for which he had to be hospitalized. This was after Labor Day in 1960. So he was forced to sit in a hospital bed and watch Jack Kennedy on TV, crisscrossing the country. And then Kennedy challenged him to 4 debates, and Nixon agreed to the first debate. Nixon did 5 rallies in 5 states on his way to Chicago. Meanwhile, Jack Kennedy was at the hotel, sunning himself with 2 hookers on the roof of the hotel. When they went to the lighting check, they say Nixon looked as gray as his suit, whereas Teddy White, the famous author, said John Kennedy looked like a bronzed god. He was so tan. Kennedy wore a navy blue suit. Nixon made the mistake of wearing a light gray suit. Huge mistake for television. But when the producer came in and said, Senator Kennedy, will you be requiring makeup for tonight's debate? And Kennedy said, no makeup for me. And of course, Nixon heard this. And then he said, Mr. Vice President, will you be requiring makeup? Nixon said, no makeup for me. Whereupon Kennedy went back to his dressing room where they flew in his own private makeup man from New York City, who made him up for the debate. And Nixon's advisors begged him to apply some makeup. Nixon ultimately agreed to a product called Lazy Shave, which is like a powder that you use to conceal a 5 o'clock shadow. And the Kennedy people very wisely turned the air conditioning off in the debate, so it was extraordinarily hot. Nixon, to his surprise, found John Kennedy attacking him not from the left, but from the right, saying that there was a missile gap with the Russians, saying that we weren't rough enough on Castro, that we were not hard enough in our fight with China over the 2 islands of Quemoy and Matsu. So Nixon began to sweat, and as he began to sweat, the makeup began to run. It was a disaster, to say the least. Nixon's own mother called his secretary, Rosemary Wood, and said, "Is Richard unwell?" Mayor Daly, the Democrat mayor of Chicago, watching the debate on TV, roared, "Nixon's not even dead yet, and they've embalmed him." It was an unmitigated disaster. Nixon was 15 pounds underweight from his hospitalization. So his shirt appeared too tight. He appeared pale and was sweating profusely.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's interesting. Those who heard the debate on the radio overwhelmingly thought that Nixon won. Those who watched the television debate with Kennedy thought that Kennedy won. But here's the part that they never tell you. There were 3 more debates. Nixon got a sun lamp. Nixon started drinking milkshakes. He gained 15 pounds. They will tell you that the audience for the first debate was substantially bigger than the other debates. That's technically true. However, the 4th debate, long considered Nixon's best debate, only had 100,000 fewer viewers than the first debate. Nixon also kept his campaign resources, husbanded them for the final days. The Kennedys were independently wealthy. They spent wall to wall from the beginning. Nixon hoarded his cash, but then dumped it on television advertising and so on. There was also one other interesting factor, and that is that unbeknownst to Nixon, Mamie Eisenhower, the First Lady, Dwight Eisenhower's wife, went to Pat Nixon, Nixon's wife, and said, you know, Ike has a delicate heart condition, and I don't think he can survive a campaign. So it would be better if Dick did not ask Ike to campaign for him. So Eisenhower was never asked to campaign. Eisenhower was extraordinarily popular. Eisenhower didn't know any of this. Eisenhower felt jilted. He thought, well, he said, Nixon thinks he doesn't need me, thinks he can win it on his own. Finally, Eisenhower got fed up and he hit the road. He did giant rallies in New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles in the closing days of that campaign. And I believe to this day, Nixon closed the gap and was robbed of the presidency in both Chicago and in Texas. Now, Texas is interesting. At that time, Texas had paper ballots. Now, listen to this. All of the candidates, the Republicans, the Democrats, the vegetarians, the socialist workers, and so on, are on a paper ballot. To vote, you circle the names of the candidates you're not for, and you leave blank, uncircled, the candidate that you're for. It's antithetical to reason.
Right.
But the law was not applied equally in every county. And in Dallas County, for example, 95,000 Nixon Lodge ballots were not counted, were thrown out, whereas Kennedy and Johnson only carried Texas by 25,000 votes. So it wasn't just Mayor Daley in Illinois, where more people voted than were registered to vote, but it was also in Texas. So I believe Nixon was cheated out of the 1960 election. Dwight Eisenhower and Tom Dewey, who had been the Republican nominee for president in 1944 and 1948, governor of New York, both urged Nixon to challenge the election. But Nixon shrewdly knew that he would go down in history as a sore loser, and the country would be badly divided. We would look terrible in the world. So he decided to wait. And of course, that was the act of a patriot. In the end, waiting turned out to be the right thing to do, as he came back to have an extraordinarily successful presidency. And as my friend Tucker Carlson has pointed out, in 1972, he won the greatest landslide in American political history, carrying 49 states and some 60+% of the popular vote.
Wow.
Was contesting an election unheard of? Is that why too he didn't want to do it? Just to contest that election, it might have been the end of his political career.
Yeah, and also most of the evidence in both Illinois and Texas had been destroyed. When I wrote my book on Nixon, my first book, I learned that the New York Herald Tribune, which was once one of the most powerful newspapers in the country, had done an amazing 6-part series on the fraud in the election, but you can't find that online. I finally tracked it down in a basement in a warehouse in New York. I was able to use it in my book, but I think that in the end, Nixon realized that he would just go down as a sore loser, that he had to just bide his time. In 1962, he ran for governor, as we say. He lost because the Cuban Missile Crisis unfolded 2 weeks before the election. The American people rallied around the president, John Kennedy. Kennedy went out to California to campaign for Pat Brown, the Democrat governor. His son, Jerry Brown, would later be governor. And Nixon surprisingly lost that race. The reason this is good is because Nixon could not foresee that not Jack Kennedy but Lyndon Johnson would be president, and that the country was not going to have three presidents in the period of 3 years. So it kept him out of the line of fire in 1964, whereas the assassination of the Kennedys, King, and the war in Vietnam opened the seas for a spectacular comeback. Nixon had prided himself on his expertise on foreign affairs. The Vietnam War was a driving issue, as well as the fact that the cities were on fire. There was great racial turbulence in the country. The whole law and order issue was secondary in that election. So it worked out in a historic way.
Yes, it did. One question before we jump. There's someone in the chat who's sent us $1, Roger, to ask you a question. It's very exciting.
Thanks, man.
I wanted to find out what do you think Richard Nixon would think about Nixon maxing if he were around with us today?
It's interesting you asked that question. Monica Crowley, who's a good friend of mine, currently our ambassador of protocol under the Trump administration, worked as an assistant to President Nixon at the same time that I was working for him in his post-presidential days. I was doing scheduling, setting up meetings, introducing him to reporters, running political errands. It's interesting. He would come to Washington very quietly. He would check into One Washington Circle, which was a small private hotel, and both Republican and Democrat members of Congress would come see him privately to get his advice on Russia, China, and other issues. It was a day in which there was much greater cohesion in our politics. But both she and I tried to tell the president that in time, his entire record would be reexamined, and that in time, people would realize the greatness of his presidency. He was skeptical about that because he had gone through this media frenzy, very similar to what you saw in the Russian collusion hoax against Donald Trump. So I think he would be surprised, but I think he'd be very pleased.
Oh, I'm sure he would. I didn't have the chance to meet him. I almost did. I was working for Tex Lazar at the time, and we were going to go out to see him, and unfortunately he passed away before we got to go out and see him. Just literally a week I could have met him. But no, I saw him give a speech in the Capitol without a note, without a teleprompter, nothing. It was remarkable. Spoke with absolute
He
clarity.
prided himself on that. This is something that we referred to as the man in the arena. He generally didn't even like a podium. He liked just a microphone stand. And he could talk on foreign affairs or domestic affairs, but mostly foreign affairs, completely extemporaneously and without a single note. And you could hear a pin drop. He very famously went to the Oxford Union in Britain in his post-presidential years. You can hear the protesters outside while he takes very difficult questions inside. So I just think it is worthwhile for people to go to the Nixon Foundation website or to go to stonezone.com, my website, grab your copy of either Nixon's Secrets or The Rise and Fall and Rise of Richard Nixon. You'll learn a lot of things there about Watergate, for example, that you didn't know.
Oh, it's very true. You guys have got to go to stonezone.com. I think it's Jessica who's asking, Roger, what did you think about the Agnew move? Do you think it was what was needed in order for Nixon to 25th for Ford? And then she says, be blessed and be a blessing.
Here's the point. Nixon recognized that he was the one figure in the party who could unite what was then the moderate to liberal Republican faction headed by George Romney, who was Mitt Romney's father, governor of Michigan, Nelson Rockefeller, the governor of New York, William Scranton, the governor of Pennsylvania, Jacob Javits, the senator from New York, as well as get the support of the conservatives like Barry Goldwater, Carl Curtis, Bill Buckley, and a number, Ramon Haruska, Strom Thurmond, very importantly, at the 1968 convention. So Nixon had to pick a running mate acceptable to both factions. Some wanted him to take Ronald Reagan. That would have caused the the moderate faction to split. Others want him to choose Chuck Percy, the then senator from Illinois, or Mark Hatfield, both of whom would later emerge as major opponents to the war in Vietnam. That would cause the conservatives like Thurmond and Goldwater to bolt. So Agnew, who was the governor of Maryland, was a compromise choice, someone acceptable to both wings. And Nixon did not know him all that well, but he looked good on paper. And then, of course, as most people know, Agnew would ultimately be forced out of office in what was allegedly a venal corruption scandal. And at that point, Nixon was essentially pressured into appointing Gerald Ford, the House Minority Leader, as vice president. Gerald Ford was never elected president. Ford was extremely vulnerable because he was a member of the Warren Commission. And in his role as the Warren Commission, on the instructions of J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, Gerald Ford took a pencil and, taking the autopsy photos of John F. Kennedy, he moved the markings that show a wound in Kennedy's upper back to the back of his neck. That was to accommodate the so-called single bullet theory. Nixon knew that. Nixon, when he was fighting impeachment and possibility of prison, he made it very clear that if he was going to prison, he was taking everyone down with him, including Gerald Ford. This is why I think he got the pardon. This is why I think he leveraged the pardon based on his knowledge regarding the Kennedy assassination and the vulnerabilities of Gerald Ford. I'm Al Haig, the former chief of staff, in his post-retirement years, confirmed this in an interview I did for my book, but I think that is the key. So Gerald Ford was a completely unelected president. He was the only one acceptable to congressional Democrats. It's how he became president. And given how badly the party was damaged in Watergate, Ford came amazingly close to winning the presidency in 1976 if in the closing days of that election he had spent his time and his money in Texas and Missouri instead of listening to his liberal Republican advisors and spending his time and money in Pennsylvania and New York. I actually think he would have beaten Carter. But they made a strategic mistake, and it cost Gerald Ford the presidency.
Wow. Just imagine all the new history that would have unfolded from that change in the history documents. Now, Drax, if it's okay, I want to turn to one of my favorite aspects of Roger Stone that I don't think is covered enough. Besides being the genius of all things fundraising, political advice, all things do not quit, he is one of the best dressed in Washington, D.C. Has always been known for that. Now, Rush had his tie, his line of ties. I think the president did too, didn't he? President Trump also had a line of ties.
He did indeed. So if you go to rogerstonesuits.com, rogerstonesuits.com, I've just introduced my own line of custom menswear for summer and spring and summer, really. We're talking about linen, we're talking about silk, we're talking about madras, we're talking about seersucker, shirts, ties, trousers, sports jackets, and suits. Our first season was fall, winter. We've worked pretty hard to get the prices down. You got two choices. You can either give us your sizes, in which case we will design a garment specific to your sizes, or we will send somebody to where you are to measure you, and you get a custom clothing. Now, everything is hand sewn, and no, I'm sorry to disappoint the people at the Washington Post style section, but none of it is made in China. None of it is made offshore. We do buy fabrics from Britain and Italy, but our suits and garments, our suits and sports jackets and trousers are all made outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We do buy our neckties from Britain, but Ralph Lauren, for example, would charge you $189 for this necktie.
Right.
At rogerstonesuits.com, I think it's $129. I just use that as an example. So for the young man in politics who's just starting out, or for an older man who's looking for classics but can't find them, whether it's a seersucker suit, whether it's a navy blue blazer, whether it's some fuller cut gray trousers, you can go to rogerstonesuits.com.
Wow. What prompted you to start your own clothing line? I mean, obviously you are literally one of the best dressed, I'm sure voted many times in DC to be one of the best dressed. They don't really know how to dress there, do they, Roger? But what prompted you to start this clothing line?
Well, when I would speak on campuses, particularly, or speak to groups of younger people, people would say to me, "Wow, I really like your suit. I really like your trousers, or I really like that necktie. Where can I find it?" And I would go online. I would realize that you really couldn't find it, or if you could find it, you couldn't find it at a reasonable price. So I wanted to do this classic line of clothing, but make it affordable. And I've written, if you go to stonezone.com, I've written a couple pieces about how to build a wardrobe and do it under a reasonable expense. But it is relatively clear that you can't find the things that I have produced online anymore. So, for example, you showed a photo of a double-breasted seersucker suit. You won't find that online any place but rogerstonesuits.com, for example.
So you adhere more to the classic sort of lines rather than following, the here today, gone tomorrow sort of trends.
Well, there's a real difference between style and fashion.
Right.
Fashion is fleeting. Ties become wider, ties become narrower. Skirts go up, skirts go down. But style is enduring. So the navy blue blazer in a single breasted or double breasted will always be stylish, will always be in style. It's one of the absolute basics for any gentleman's wardrobe, or a khaki trousers, for example, or navy gray trousers. So I'm trying to provide the basics. And again, you go to rogerstonesuits.com and you can check it out.
I know that we're going to send my son there since he's starting out in the political realm, and he's not quite ready for my husband's penchant for Robert Graham, but he much would prefer your style.
Yeah, definitely. Jack, your husband dresses a little flashy sometimes, Kay, though. That's good, though. I think you stand out. You got to stand out. You got to make your own name for yourself.
I know. You can see his suit jackets from space. Now, what's the price range? What's sort of available?
That's kind of up to you, because it's based on the quality of the fabric that you choose. Obviously, more expensive fabrics cost more. Less expensive fabrics cost less. We have some, Italian Laura Piana fabric, for example, which would cost you more. You can spend $3,500 for a suit, or you can spend $189 for a suit. Depends on the quality of the fabric, depends on your budget, but we will work for you. We also offer suspenders as well as neckties. I'm not sure I'll ever really make money at it, but that's not really my goal. If I could just break even, I'd be happy.
Well, we're here to help you do that, Roger. Now, is part of the tailoring, I think, is so important that I think people make mistakes on tailoring all too often. How do you find a good tailor, and what are sort of the hallmarks of really good tailoring?
We have the best tailors in the world. Your suit should speak before you do when you enter the room. So you want very precise tailoring. Drax, we could really fix you up. Trust me, brother.
There you go.
You'd like $1,000,000.
And my birthday's coming up. I'm going to hit Kay up for this.
We'll give you a little discount.
There you go.
Yeah, so Drax is Drax. Now, part of what we're doing here as well, I've got to ask you the ultimate question, and you may surprise me. You always do with this stuff. How much do you hate the dress down Fridays tradition that came into the workplace?
Look, I believe that a gentleman should always be dressed for the activity in which you're about to engage. So, You wouldn't wear a three-piece suit to a bowling alley. You wouldn't wear workout clothes to a five-star restaurant. In other words, it all has to do with being appropriate. Obviously, athletic wear belongs in the gym or when you're engaged in some athletic pursuit. But the most important thing to remember, the most basic thing to remember, are two things. One, always be dressed appropriately for the activity in which you're about to engage. And then, secondarily, in all honesty, you can never be overdressed. You can only be underdressed. So if a suit and tie is required, but you show up in a tuxedo, you won't look like a fool. But if shirt and tie is required and you show up in a t-shirt and shorts, you're going to look like a buffoon.
Yeah, I've done that before. I ended up at a biker bar wearing swim trunks and a t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
It was awful.
Well, that wouldn't be my first choice there, Drax. Phantom Mega, who does those great videos at the beginning, he says, "Hey, it's Phantom, the useful tool. Roger Stone fan for many years. I do the videos for the Daily Fix. I hope Roger liked my intro. Roger suits are classy and badass. I'm getting one."
Phantom, you're a big hero of his. He really gets into you. He really, he's been hitting me up all day. He's like, man, just make sure Mr. Stone sees the intro. I said, he sees the intro.
I thought it was terrific. I thought the AI generated images of President Nixon were great. Watching all those Nixon tattoos. You know, I have this Nixon tattoo still in the middle of my back. I've thought about adding Reagan, Goldwater, and Trump to turn it into like a Mount Rushmore thing.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Who knows? I might yet do that. You never know.
If you do, all right, you're going to have to come on and reveal it there, Roger. I'm just saying. You're going to have to come on and reveal it. Okay, so you also have an amazing Substack, which I follow. You have some of the best takes on things around. So folks can find you just at your name on Substack, right?
Well, they can, but even easier, you can go to stonecoldtruth.com. That's where my Substack shows. That way, the link will populate if you repost it. Stonecoldtruth.com, or you can go to stonezone.com. That's where I both write and show videos. And then I have a daily radio show at 77 WABC in New York, which is the most powerful AM radio station in the country. And I think among the most influential. To hear that, you go to WABCradio.com at 8 o'clock. Or if you miss the show, you can go online at WABCradio.com and find the daily show. It's on at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 nights a week, 2 hours on Sunday from 3 to 5 at 77 WABC, but more importantly at WABCradio.com. Let's face it, I definitely have a face for radio.
No, not at all, Roger. You're still one of the most handsome men in DC. I'm telling you right now. But technically, not in DC. We've all escaped. Thank you, God. But
we might send you back, Kay, one day.
no,
Come on.
no, I thought you liked me.
People.
Come on now. No, don't want to get any on me. Now, one last question on Nixon Max. I think I would be remiss if I don't ask this. One last thing. At the time of the Nixon administration, one would think that every young person was some hippie escapee from Woodstock that despised both America and the Nixon administration. But I noted that he brought in folks like you, folks like Pat Buchanan, very young at the time, folks like Tex Lazar, who was one of the youngest in the speechwriting department. And so not every young American was a hippie escaping from Woodstock, were they?
Actually, Nixon's staff for his 1968 comeback initially, I think every member of the staff was in their 20s. Dr. Martin Anderson, John Sears, Pat Buchanan, I'm blanking on a couple of the other names, but people who would go on to play important roles in American politics. So the initial group that surrounded Nixon in his comeback were all in their 20s.
That doesn't surprise me. It's just so funny how it's framed that, this was the flower child generation and everybody was in it. My brothers weren't. Uh, they were very much Nixon supporters as young people, all the way back to Goldwater. So same sort of pathway as you.
Yeah.
In fact, I have brothers your age. So, but no, it strikes me that with all this reframing and all this reclassifying, I'm so glad that we have you to explain some of the behind the scenes things that went on that nobody else could possibly know. And would you say that Nixon ever looked back at his administration and said to himself, "Gosh, I wish I hadn't done that"? Like you mentioned, the Fed taking off the gold standard and things like that. I mean, do you think he ever had any regrets?
Actually, Nixon himself said many times, always look forward, never look back. He was always very optimistic, very forward looking. I don't think he had any regrets. Look, his career is really meteoric. People need to recognize he was released from the Army or the Navy, pardon me, in 1945. He couldn't find a job, even though he had a law degree. He looked for a job on Wall Street. Tells me a famous story that he was going around Wall Street on the East Coast looking for a job, going to some of the biggest white shoe law firms with his resume. And he was a Californian. He didn't really fit in, couldn't find a job. He said he was in a skyscraper down on Wall Street, and he looked out, and there was a ticker tape parade. And Dwight Eisenhower, the hero of World War II, was going by in this incredible ticker tape parade. Nixon was unemployed. 6 years later, Richard Nixon was Dwight Eisenhower's running mate for vice president. He ran for Congress in 1946. He won in an uphill fight against an incumbent. He was reelected when both parties nominated him in 1948. Then in 1950, he ran for the U.S. Senate in a very rough campaign, won that. And then in 1952, he was selected for the ticket. So 6 years going from nobody, in essence, to being on the national ticket. He's the only man to be on the ticket, let's see, it would be 5 times, twice with Eisenhower, and then 3 times in his own right, 1960, 1968, and 1972. So that's an extraordinary record. It was a meteoric rise, but he was very, very forward looking. It was very hard to get him to be retroactive in his views. You can find some interviews where he talks about his friendship with John Kennedy. They were very good friends. They were both ardent anti-communists, something you don't see in today's Democrat Party.
Isn't that shocking?
He was also in the military, Nixon. He was in the military, in the Navy.
And frankly, he financed his campaign for Congress with his poker winnings. He was a very good poker player.
I believe that.
He was essentially the commissary officer, so he was able to get his hands on beef for hamburgers or maybe a little hooch for the boys. And he would run like what they call Nicky's hamburger stand. And he was very popular in the Navy. And he was a mean poker player, so he took that nest egg from his poker winnings, and that's how he financed his 1946 campaign for Congress.
Wow.
And
he made a mean martini too.
Nixon, his wife, she played a big role in a lot of these votes.
She is the first candidate's wife to go on her own independent schedule. When she was the vice presidential candidate's wife, when she was the wife of the vice president, when she was the wife of the presidential candidate in 1960 and 1968. I think she had, based on what I've read, and I did meet her on a number of occasions, both in New York and in New Jersey, as well as California. She had grave reservations about the 1962 campaign. She turned out to be right about that, although it did serve the purpose of keeping him out of the line of fire, as I said, 1964. There's a new biography on Pat Nixon out. I have not read it yet, but there's also one written by one of his daughters. It's most excellent.
Wow.
But yes, she's a key figure. I was at her funeral. I was also at President Nixon's funeral.
So was I.
He had a profound effect on my life, to say the least.
I was sitting in between Tex Lazar and Pat Buchanan, trying to keep them in line because they were sitting behind God, David, what's his name from David Gergen from the Clinton administration. So I was trying to keep these two in line. It was not easy. It was odd at the Nixon funeral. At the reception, did you notice that Spiro Agnew had his back to to G. Gordon Liddy, who had his back? They were all in the same arena.
Yeah, my wife and I went through the receiving line with the presidential families, the Fords, the Reagans, the Bushes, the Clintons, and I had worked very hard to get President Nixon a meeting with President Clinton so they could discuss Russia and China. Nixon was above all a patriot. That meeting got canceled a number of times. Ultimately got scheduled. Nixon correctly recognized that it was Hillary Clinton who kept canceling the meeting. So as I went through the line, I got to President Clinton. I introduced myself, and he says, he holds on to your hand. He doesn't let it go.
Yeah, I know.
I know how hard you worked to get me and President Nixon together. I just want you to know I really came to admire him, to really appreciate his foreign policy advice, and I really appreciate your efforts. I said, thank you, Mr. President. He turned to Hillary, said, Hillary, you know Roger Stone. She looked at me up and down and said, yeah, I know you. I wouldn't shake my hand, and I moved on to the next person.
Yeah, she was a real warm,
So comforting.
warm
She's so
gal.
comforting. I got one more question coming out of the audience from Buckster. It says, Mr. Stone, what is your most difficult moment in politics aside from your politically motivated arrest?
There's no question about that, and that is, I very easily could have just turned on Donald Trump. The prosecutors made it very clear that if I would just lie, if I would claim that I discussed Russian collusion or WikiLeaks collaboration with Donald Trump, that they would recommend that I serve no jail time. And there was no way in the world that I was ever going to do that. And I realized I was staring into the abyss, that I would probably lose a trial in D.C., most likely, and be sent to a long prison term. But there was no decision to make. And it's interesting, I go online and people say, oh, you criticize Steve Bannon, he's the architect of MAGA. No, sorry. I tried to get Donald Trump to run for president as early as 1988, if you go back and look. Again in 2000, again in 2012, and ultimately in 2016. Being targeted in the Russian collusion hoax was the greatest battle of my life. Then shortly after I was pardoned, my wife was diagnosed with very aggressive stage 4 cancer. It is only through the power of prayer and her perseverance that she is today 5+ years cancer free. And I thank God both for my freedom and for my wife's health and her happiness.
And it's almost as though you mirrored Richard Nixon in a way. You've had quite the comeback as well. Not that I ever thought you went away. I've always followed your career, Paul Manafort, Charlie Black. I worked for Phil Graham, so I knew Charlie. You did an amazing interview with Hannity and Paul Manafort. Wow. You guys really laid it out there on what you guys went through, which was so wrong in so many ways. And thank you for doing that interview.
I appreciate that very much. All right, with that,
yes,
I am going to move. It has been a long, hard day. It's 100 degrees here in South Florida. So I'm going to move along. Once again, go to stonezone.com, stonezone.com. You can grab all my books there, or your Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong t-shirt if you wish, or whatever else. Or go to stonecoldtruth.com. You can check out my Substack. If you're interested in my books on Nixon, go to the store at stonezone.com. They're less expensive than if you go online, and you get an autographed copy.
Oh, I'm going to have to do that for sure. Now, also, when I'm back in South Florida, I'm definitely going to have to buy you a Nixon martini. But I wanted to thank you for coming in. They can find you on X. What's your handle on X?
I'm Roger J. Stone Jr., Roger J. Stone Jr. Now, interestingly, for some reason, despite the fact that I follow the rules and I continue to post, the number of my followers, instead of gaining, it seems to drop. I can't really explain that. I had explosive. First of all, I was banned entirely in 2017. I'm still banned for life on Facebook. So if you see a Roger Stone on Facebook, that's not me. If you see a Roger Stone on Instagram, that's not me. If you see a Roger Stone on YouTube, that's not me. I'm still banned in those places. but I'm not banned on X. I thank Elon Musk for that. I'm Roger J. Stone Jr., Roger Stone Jr. You can follow me there. And I guarantee you, right after the show, the number of followers I have will actually drop.
Oh, okay. You guys.
That could be capable. That could be.
Let's go follow him. Send it out. Encourage everybody in your rooms to follow him. Let's get his numbers up. Come on, audience. I need you to do this, and I need you guys to go check out Roger Stone Suits as well. Check out his websites. The books are amazing. The Netflix show is amazing. The suits are amazing. I'm just grateful you're here, Roger. Thank you so much for your time today.
Your time.
Great to be with you, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank
God
you.
bless you.
Come back anytime. Thank you. All right, Daly. Roger Stone is wrapped up. It's always fun to have Mr. Stone in the house.
I know. Look, we have a lot of news to go over, obviously, on Friday. We will get to all the news we promised, but we thought this was too special to not do. We're going to have some other interviews coming up. I think you guys are going to really, really, really like as well. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be doing the limited series, the feminist backlash series. We're going to have Charlie Sue and Right Side Rebel come on in and talk about how they basically didn't heed the siren call of feminist theocracy. Managed to do just fine without it.
There you go. Can't wait for that. And also following it, it'll be Thursday night, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Before we get on the air, make sure you guys swing on down to X Spaces, grab those mics, and display your factor foolery. That's right. Lisa and JB, Factor Foolery. Get on out to X Space tomorrow night at 8 o'clock before you roll on up to see us at the Daly Fix Special Edition with Charlie Sue and Right Side Rebel. Talking more about that feminism stuff. It was heated last week, man, with Patriot Rob in Florida. Let's see what we can do this week, Jay. It's going to be great. Last night, man, you seen a great show. We had Bodie as the guest with Joker's Wild, Smile, and Dial. We did the zombie episode. This week, it will be astrology, so make sure you tune in at 10 p.m. EST.
You sit bound by the laws of logic. Just beyond the horizon lies a frequency unseen, where the bizarre finds a voice. Footprints that vanish. Metallic craft gliding through skies. Whispers from shadow figures. Ghost steps in an empty corridor. Don't keep your secrets in the dark. Call in at Joker's Wild, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Joker's Wild, Smile, and Dial. Make sure you guys tune in every Tuesday at 10 p.m. to check out the new episodes with Jersey Boy, Joker, myself, Miss Bodie, and we had a great time last night, okay? Zombies.
Did you have midget zombies, though?
Midget zombies, man. I'll tell you what, there's probably some in the audience, but next week, astrology. And we know we're Scorpios, okay? We're like
I know. It's kind of scary. 2 Scorpios doing a show. It's scary.
Always strange, but here we are. All right, man. And Thursday, coming up tomorrow, 5 p.m., you got that 3D Response live stream with Jason and all the boys at 3D Response are trying to keep those kids safe. You can always keep the kids safe with that multi-layer solution.
This isn't about gun control or politics. Enough is enough. The innocent need real tools.
There has been 260 years of American school massacres.
Minnesota-based 3D Response Systems.
We understand that the prevention is the most important piece.
America's first school massacre occurred in the year 1764. School massacres have surged, with 346 reported last year.
We saw a gunman in a black trench coat with a very huge gun. He was shooting down at these students.
And just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
3D Response Systems is a multi-layered design to get the police there faster and provide tools for the people inside to survive.
Our system comes into play to keep as many people safe as we possibly can.
3dresponse.com, the multi-layer solution. Check out their website. Download their literature for the school boards and your communities to keep those kids safe. Also support them through their badass merch. Then you got Friday nights, 9 p.m. EST, Joe Lanou and the Night Court crew with their hit show, The Grand Jury. That's right, Joe Lanou and the Night Court crew with their hit show, The Grand Jury. Check it out, 9 p.m. EST on X Live and Rumble. You guys can also check out their after space. We can find those 3D Response Boys hanging out, talking about the show and answering all your questions about that badass system. Okay, check this out before we roll up on out here. I didn't want to leave you with none.
Oh.
Hope they're both okay.
Oh my gosh.
A little fun before we're done.
I can't. Yeah.
Just wrong. Hope they're both okay, man. Lovely couple.
Wow. All right. I also neglected to thank Beast for his contribution there. Thank you so much, Beast. You're one of our absolute favorites all the way back from the pub chat days. We appreciate you too.
Yeah. Speaking of the pub chat table, I miss Charlie Sue, like you said, tomorrow night with Right Side Rebel. And I can't wait for that, 9 p.m. EST.
I know. Should be fun. I mean, look, we are taking a little bit of a different sort of take on feminism, and it's not what you've heard before. The first show certainly wasn't. We had our reasons for doing it the way we did. I will explain them tomorrow night. And we're doing this next show for reasons, which I will explain tomorrow night. And then we have one last show in the series next Thursday.
Yeah. The 3-week episode thing will be wrapping up, but I'm sure we'll find new topics to talk about as we move on forward with this, this fun adventure. I do want to give a special thank you to Phantom Maga, though. He does a lot of stuff for us. He came up with that video. I'm going to play that video when we're rocking out here tonight so y'all can see it once more. But he does all this in short amount of time. He puts a lot of effort into it, and we can't thank him enough here at the Daly Fix for all he does.
Yes, he does. Thank you, Phantom.
Yeah,
You're the most amazing dude ever. Your creative mind knows no boundaries.
I mean, he called me. He's like, I got it. I'll be done. And I mean, boom. And it was awesome. I mean, what an intro for Mr. Stone to see. It was a great job by Phantom Maga, the useful tool. Make sure you guys are dropping him a follow. And also go check out all of Roger Stone stuff. Drop him a follow. Like he said, you know what? I know he was short for time, so I didn't want to tell him, like, Roger, we all feel that. It's like we stay in the same spot. We never seem to grow. And you wake up and you lose because they did some kind of bot purge and take away all my porn accounts.
Exactly. Gosh, how I'll miss them. All my Elon.
You know, they're really actively helping a lot. So.
Yeah, right. So, no, I understand it, but let's see if we can't show Roger some love either with his books, with his suit line, which really is amazing. I'm telling you, there was a Best Dressed in Washington, D.C. Contest. And
okay, I need you to give me some of those suspenders that he sells for my birthday, and I'll wear them right here. I'll just throw them.
The suspender that we called them braces back in the day, and yeah, braces. You gotta love a good pair of braces. A well-dressed man.
You call them braces? See, where I'm from, there's just suspenders.
I know they are suspenders, but we used to call them braces.
Oh, yeah.
But Patrick needs to get on over to Roger Stone Suits and get him a few if he's going to be.
Yeah, get him tailored up, President Pat, because he's going to be political, man. He's going to be the next president. Not the next one day, I promise you. Pat, man. He's my ticket to a night in the Lincoln bedroom, man. He said that's mine if he wins. I get in there with the ghost.
Oh my goodness, they're showing us the stickers that they're getting over at Rumble, Drax.
Oh wow, they give out stickers over there?
Yeah, apparently they're really good.
Well, that theme park sounds funner than X at this time.
I know.
Because X is still I heard today Nikita actually stepped away to a different position. So the people that are out there always saying he's a nightmare. Hey, rest easy, man. He's gonna be getting a coffee and doing something else.
Yes, and don't worry about Michigan. We'll talk about that on Friday. Michigan.
You had somebody
good, y'all.
Phil Mathers, man. Come on.
It's looking good.
Good.
So,
I went out there to vote. It even said show your ID, but I know there's some confusion. But in my town, Kate, they let you show the ID and you went and did the job.
I know. No, it's a good day. a good day, you guys. Lots of good things happening in elections, but we got to get out there and still work. So make sure if you're near a campaign in a battleground state, get out there and do some work on it, because that's the most important thing we can do right now.
Go knock on the door, convince them they're not fucking communists. Do all that stuff. You guys will have fun, man. I promise. All right, rock and roll. Thanks, you guys. Continue to share it out throughout the night. Without you, it wouldn't be possible. There's plenty of entertainment for your listening pleasure out there on X Spaces from the boardwalk to the boulevard. So if you can't be good, check out Phantom Maga's badass artwork. We're going to play as we roll up out of here because you know he's bad.
Dick Nixon's silver bullet, as he called it. Now, when I said, Mr. President, that's a great recipe. This is a great martini. He said, yeah, I got the recipe from Winston Churchill.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Phantom Maga, political comic and conservative video producer on X. Some people are out there looks maxing, while other people are out there gym maxing. And then you've got some people on the left-wing spectrum that are out there retard maxing. But on the other hand, you've got Roger Stone, who has been Nixon maxing before it was even a term. If you haven't seen his documentary on Netflix, Get Me, Roger Stone, I highly suggest it. It's totally educational, historic, informative, and absolutely entertaining. I was cracking up the whole time. It was absolutely amazing. And he has a kick-ass line of suits where you can look classy and totally badass at the same time. And if you haven't seen the trailer yet, check it out for yourself. Here it is.
He loves the game, he has fun with it, and he's very good at it.
I'm an agent provocateur.
Political strategist.
Controversial as you can get.
An incredible capacity for treachery.
Win at all cost mentality.
When people think of Washington corruption, they think of Roger Stone.
Those who say I have no soul, those who say I have no principles, are losers. Those are bitter losers.
There's really nobody quite like Roger Stone.
The Nixon tattoo is really all you need to know about Roger.
We really pioneered negative campaign advertising.
He created the modern sleazeball lobbyist.
Washington's been worse for it ever since.
Stone's rule: it is better to be infamous than never be famous at all.
The swinger scandal happened.
My private life is nobody's business.
I got chased out of Washington.
He's looking to see if he can find an angle.
I was like a jockey looking for a horse. You can't win the race if you don't have a horse.
Roger saw something that nobody else saw back in the early 80s.
I suggested that Trump should explore a bid for the presidency.
He created Donald Trump as a political figure.
You're the biggest lie, loser. What have I lied about?
Have you spoken with the WikiLeaks founder?
You're a rape tonight.
Roger, you can't just say that.
You have to be outrageous to get noticed.
America may be collapsing, but Roger Stone is determined to enjoy it.
He is a longtime confidant of our current president and now author of The Making of the President 2016, How Donald Trump Orchestrated a Revolution. Donald Trump's albino assassin, Roger Stone. Roger. Now, you don't mind that I call you his albino assassin, do you?
No, comrade.
Okay.
I mean, Bill.
And now for a Phantom MAGA intro feature film.
Operation Midnight Jack Smith Hammer is about to commence. We are going in.
(10-4) closing in on the Smith residence now.
No mercy.
Yes, sir. I repeat, Maverick and Red Rover wake baby Jack from the bassinet.
Jack Smith should receive the full Roger Stone treatment with a SWAT team banging on Jack Smith's door at 3 a.m. What do you say to that?
Showtime!
The breach has full approval.
Roger that.
Honey, what in the hell is that?
You know one of my quotes? Greatness comes in simple trappings.